Hello, and welcome to the show with me, Jillian Godsil. Now, today my guest is Maarten Ectors, who is Commercial Director of Pollen Defi, and lots more beside. Maarten, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm delighted because I was going through your LinkedIn profile. You are a man of many parts. So before we talk about Pollen and what it's doing and what you bring to Pollen, I want to rattle through just some of your previous careers and sectors you've worked in and maybe get a feeling for your expertise and your experience. So insurance, you've spent a lot of time in insurance. How disruptive are modern technologies to insurance products?
I would say completely disruptive in some parts. If you look at like autonomous cars, for instance, they can now impact how we drive. So car insurance will just be completely transformed. As an example, when the car starts driving, you don't have to insure the family anymore. That is at the moment driving it. So it's those type of things that like are disruptive, but I focused on many aspects there. I put reinsurance on the blockchain. How do you make it engaging mobile app for instance, pension customers, workplace pension, or like how do you make it that like claims really become easy to do? Hey, you wake up in the morning, your television fell from the wall. How do we make it super easy for an honest customer and super hard for a dishonest customer? Those were the type of things I focused on.
Interesting, because isn't insurance seen so much as a grudge necessity? Because we know to drive a car, well, it's also a legal requirement. But it is frustrating when it seems that sometimes insurance companies do not really want to serve the customer. That's the kind of impression, and they're not very popular a lot of times. But a lot of that, I think, is like the friction. You know, my car broke down. Now, why can't I sort of affect whatever piece of my insurance says that I can get a tow truck or a new car or whatever it is? It seems very hard to get through.
It's a win-lose relationship. That's the problem. Like if the insurer pays, then the customer wins and they lose. If the customer doesn't pay, then the insurer wins. So that's sort of where sometimes the friction happens, because there's no win-win possibility in that model. Some insurtechs have come up with better models. So that's also part of the innovations, and that's actually where I focus. So I come more from a software innovation background, and I wanted to understand, after I worked with like one of the most disruptive software companies in the UK, why are like the more traditional companies not using all this great AI, blockchain, cloud, and other type of technologies, IoT and so on. And that's why I joined them and worked for them for almost 4 years.
So you've been working with blockchain a long while, applying it to these different sectors.
Blockchain is one, so I worked with cloud, IoT. So for instance, I introduced cloud in 2009 when I was at Nokia. We started making ventures around how can you use it in telecom, and we built an IoT spin-off back then. I then did cloud strategy. I set up an IoT business, and that's where I actually found out in 2016. I presented on DEFCON 1. Vitalik was just after me, and on stage. So,
oh wow,
so
that's exciting.
And I was talking about, for instance, the IoT applied to Ethereum. So how can you, for instance, make fridges that have an app store that be mining Ether, and like if one of the 20 breaks, then like the other 19 could go to Amazon and buy a new fridge for you. Those type of things. Or how could you put an app store on a 3D printer and on a drone, and then like with ETH, go and buy on your neighbor's printer something and then use the drone to fly it. Those were the type of things that I was looking into. And I found this very amazing startup back then. 3 people took them to Mobile World Congress. They won the award for best IoT 4 years from now. And then when we asked them like, hey, because the second space tourist was my line manager, so he had quite some money, so he wanted to invest in them, and they turned him down. And that was the first time that we saw that. So we're like, okay, you have money from other VCs? No. So how can it be that a 3-people company that like needed money to scale that thing didn't want money? And that's when some months later they started the DAO, and this company was Slockit, and basically created, I don't know if you remember, 2017, Slockit raised 150 million, and then 50 million got stolen which at like last year's ETH prices would be billions and would have been the biggest highest of ETH, and that's why Ethereum was split into classic and
okay. Yes.
so,
Oh my
so
goodness.
that's the first time that I was really in touch with Ethereum. And
Wow, you're back at you're a real OJ Simpson, someone quite different. So Maarten, then also you've worked in climate offsetting. Again, really only possible with blockchain, isn't it? Because of the transparency.
So I advise several customers that I think are innovative. So this specific one was looking at like, how can we make transparency in a market where there's none? At the moment, you have all these like offsetting projects on the other side of the world, often like in regions where like people with bribes could like say, hey, don't you see like 1 million trees being planted here? Yes, I see them type of things. So with blockchain and with like evidence-based solutions like IoT satellites and all these type of things, you could actually make those things really, really transparent. So from like the one side in the world where somebody's picking plastic out of the ocean to on the other side, you going into a Tesco here and wanting to offset the plastic that you just bought as your grocery. So that's the amazing power of tokenization. And that's what really I'm passionate about.
You also work with NFTs and metaverses.
Yes.
What do you like about them?
Well, I work with NFTs and I also soulbound tokens, which I'll explain in a second. But like the NFT can do so much more than just have an image. It can actually be used for many other things. So this specific customer wants content licensing, and the really interesting thing is it's a Web2 company with very famous customers that now has a problem that can only be solved with a token. So we're bringing it into Web3. So unlike anything I've seen out there where like we have a token solution looking for a problem, this is the other way around. And so clients will be able to find content, license it, and then be going from like what they currently know, which is like putting an image on the street on some boards, to like putting it into GameFi, putting it in the metaverse. And so we're working on bringing these top brands from the billboards into the metaverse.
And then the other area that we touch on before we talk about Pollen, tokenomics. Now
Yes.
that is such a confusing space. People say, oh, I know tokenomics, and they think about the pie chart, and that's how we do it. But it's not as simple as that.
No, it's about bringing utility, and through that utility influencing that the token value is there for whoever initially invested in it. That's where it all boils down, because like too many projects are like talking up their token value. A lot of marketing money is spent, and lots of events and other type of things, listings and so on. But really, it should only about like, are their users actually using it? And if they're using it, does that really bring win-win situations? So it's all about finding those type of things. You can do a lot of maths, you can do a lot of modeling and so on, but like it's about utility.
Oh, that's interesting. That does make sense, because it goes back to the whole thing about tokenomics and tokens, not securities, but utility.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, cool. Okay, so that's it. I'm glad to touch on a couple of those things: experience that you have, and knowledge that you have, expertise that you have. So Pollen DeFi 2.0. Can you tell me what it is and how did you get involved? You're the commercial director. How did you, are you one of the co-founders as well?
I joined just a little bit after,
Okay.
but I've been now there since October. So in this space, it's a long time. And let me take a step back and talk first about the bigger problem. Mm-hmm. So if you look into today's market and you would have money, where do you invest it in? It used to be very easy, like 10, 15 years ago, you'd give it to asset managers. They would deal with it and you didn't have to worry. But then Warren Buffett came along and said, like, ooh, most of them actually never beat the market, and they charge you an arm and a leg. And I'll bet $1 million that like if I put it into just following an S&P 500 type of thing, that I win in a decade. And he won that bet. So what has happened, like everybody now is just putting their money in index funds. So S&P 500 goes up, NASDAQ goes up, and you basically make money. And the theory is over the long run, these things tend to go up. That's all great, and they're super cheap. But what happens now is that like we've had a decade of the S&P 500 going up, but the next 3 years, it's unlikely that that will continue. So high inflation, no place to actually like get any return, too expensive to go to asset management, no interest in banks. So what do you do now? Like if you have money, what do you do? And that's sort of like where we're thinking, there should be something there that like an index where you just buy an index token and then others make sure it gets invested in such a way that like it beats the market. And if the market goes down, you can go short. If the market goes up, you can go long. So it's not only like the current indexes that only know how to go long when the market goes up. And the thing we do like about the current index funds is that they're cheap. So we want to even make it cheaper. So can we make something that like investors just pay gas fees to like rebalance their assets and then buy a token, and it now is automatically invested in market beating long and short positions. And that last part, that's the key to the how there, but that's exactly what Pollen is focusing on.
So are you saying that someone who has money now, the traditional forms are not going to work because asset management too expensive, indexes not going to go up the whole time, they reach a peak almost. So looking at Pollen, and so it's cheaper, do people have to actually actively invest, or can they just buy the token and then do nothing and let it sit, or how does it work?
So we've actually separated the problem into two parts. So where the indexes, let's park that for a moment. Let's focus on like, how do we know where to invest and how to like get to market beating investment portfolios? Well, for that, we've copied some ideas from traditional finance. I don't know if you're familiar with copy trading or like prediction markets, but we are using those and we've added some new innovations around them. So on one side, Pollen Virtual, you go there and you play your portfolio out against others. You stake a little bit of the Pollen token, and now you see, hey, my basket of my basket of assets, is it better than yours? Does it make a profit while yours doesn't? So that's the basic thing. We start competing. And if, let's say that you're the expert and I'm not, your basket continuously, every time that you rebalance it, goes up in value. Mine goes down. So what happens now is that you become the first in the leaderboard, while I am perhaps at position 5,000. So I'm going, I want to know how Jillian does that. I want to have like the performance Jillian has. So with copy trading, which we call delegation, I can put my Pollen into following you. And by doing so, if you go from like $100 to like $200, everybody that follows you will see that same uplift. So imagine that 1 million follows you, that will then become 3 million. And you will get 20% of the profit. So that extra 2 million that you create, you'll get 20% on it. So that means 400,000. And this is following what I call the influencer model on YouTube. So you have Mr. Beast making millions, and you have millions trying to be number 2 that makes millions. And this is the power law we see all over. So we're seeing that same with investors. Can we make it that like some really good star investors gets paid quite a lot of money through delegation and other type of ways, and then others just follow them, and we now get the information about like you know what's going to happen in the market, because like you are the last 20 times that you predicted, you were 19 times right, for instance.
Yeah.
Now the problem is you still are like 5% wrong. So if we would just follow you alone, then like 5% of the time you make a mistake, and that might be a big mistake. So that doesn't really cut it. So what we do is we rank everybody, and on our beta we had 7,500 people, and we then take the top 50. And we take the collective view of the top 50, not your view, the second, the third, but like collectively, what do you think the market will do? What would be a basket that if we would invest in, it would take your collective intelligence? And what we found out is that approach beats any of the other approaches we've seen, like just following like Bitcoin or like CCI 30 or other type of like indexes. They don't perform in the same way as like if you just take enough people, pick the experts, and collectively see what they want to do. So that's how we get the data. So now if we on one side get the best data, and on the other side have an index that takes that data and invests, and you just buy some index tokens from that index, you basically don't have to pay them because they're getting paid through the game, and these indexes just can beat the market.
So you don't even have to pick your top leaders.
No,
the system picks the top, and is 50, is that like a figure that makes the most sense?
Well, this is the thing. We're not building an index. We're building an index factory where you as an investor can jointly say, okay, we want to pick the top 50, or we want to do this or that. Give me an index that does that. And then you buy the tokens from that index, and with the money that you use to buy, automatically assets are bought every day and swapped. And you can also make like indexes that go very specific. And what this is, we call it leaks. So what we found out is, imagine I'm at position 3000. It's unlikely I'm going to become ever number one. So I might lose interest in playing the game because I can never make a lot of money. So the solution to that is to make specialization. So in a league, I can go and, for instance, specialize in like DeFi or the eco tokens we talked about before. I might be the number one in eco tokens, but very, very bad in general investment. Well, in the eco token league, I can now be number one. And these leagues can also be sponsored. So if there's some kind of eco companies that want to attract my attention, they would sponsor the eco league. So again, I can make money predicting where the eco tokens will go tomorrow. And that's on the virtual side. And then an index can just say, I'm the eco index. If you want to invest in the best eco tokens, I do that automatically for you.
So you have active people who are following, who understand, who've experience, and then the rest, the hoi polloi, of which I would be one of those, they just decide to follow different leagues, if you like, or different groups.
Yeah, so let me separate it because it's a little bit complicated. On one side, it's a virtual game to find the data. On the other side, it's the actual investment based on that data. So if you want to show that you're good, you play in the leagues. And the reason why you want to play in the leagues could be that you could be also playing with your family and friends and show that you're the better investor. Or we also allow leagues to compete with one another. So it could be the Oxford versus Cambridge league type of thing.
Okay, a bit of rivalry.
Yeah, rivalry, because the more people tell us what the market will do and the better we can then rank them, the better the information becomes for the indexes to buy. So if you're just an investor that wants to invest in the best eco tokens, you buy that index token from that eco index, and it just asks every day to the top 50 eco traders, what's your prediction for the market? Which tokens will go long, which tokens will go short, and which tokens should I now sell that I no longer need? And that's what the index does.
Is that why you call it home of the hive mind?
Yes.
It is like a hive, it's a buzzy bee.
it's bees, hives, that pollination, all that, like working together to get to that, like, well, it's not honey, it's like market insight, market prediction, because then the indexes can use that information.
And how will that succeed against other DeFi products? Like, for example, I know we're in a bear market now, and there's quite a few DeFi products that are not performing so well, and some CeFi products which are falling over totally. How would people have sort of confidence in Pollen? How do you build that in?
So basically, Pollen is an ecosystem more than like a product, because a lot of the existing DeFi players can actually add value. So if you're an eco marketplace, well, you can have your own league where you invite people from your community to play and tell the rest of the world that they're the best eco trader. And as such, that information can now be used for an eco index that buys directly from your eco marketplace. So if you're an eco marketplace, you want to be there. If you're a collector's marketplace with like cigars and expensive watches and so on, you can tokenize those things. You can have, again, your league and your index. So for very specific groups that have specific type of tokens, the leagues and the indexes can help them create more transactions on their platform. If you're a DeFi protocol that's yield generation based, then you can also integrate, because if you have an index, it has a set of assets that it holds. So if it's a DeFi index, for instance, it has, for instance, today 20 DeFi tokens, and then tomorrow it changes 3 of them for 3 other ones. But all those tokens are just sitting there not doing anything. So we have the concept of vaults where you store them on the blockchain, but you could also have a yield generating vault. So while we're not doing anything with a certain token, why don't we put it to generate some extra yield by giving it to some over collateralized lending or some other type of like staking mechanism, so that like it can generate extra money. And then the last part is we're working on a sort of like, we call it the module store, because the way our indexes are made, it's like Lego blocks. You can like pick some block out and put another in its place. So if you don't like the vaults I just mentioned, and you want a regulated custodian to hold all the assets, you pick out this block and you put a regulated custodian in. And now some third party will manage the assets. And if you want to have like KYC, AML, and other type of regulated modules, you'd be also able to add that, so that people that want to make regulated indexes would be able to create regulated indexes that like have regulated reporting and tax and risk management and whatever. So what we're trying to create is this ecosystem where like, hey, everything and the foundations is open source and freely available. But if you partner, you can like generate extra value for customers, and as such, make money on top.
So it's much more than your Commoner Gardener DeFi app. You're bringing in partners and other groups and people who can tokenize whatever they want to tokenize and set up their own leagues. It's quite big.
Well, I don't like to innovate with something small that can't change the world. I like to go to a 10 trillion index fund market and come up with a better way of doing it. That's what really excites innovators, because what I've seen with the pension funds and so on, a lot of that is invested in things where like, yeah, 2008 was a good example. It was supposed to all go well, and then it didn't. What I like is the transparency of these blockchains, because you can now see if there's an error somewhere. It's not like some kind of hidden thing behind the curtain that all of a sudden explodes. So although crypto values are going down, a lot of things are tokenized nowadays, from like jointly buying buildings to like the collectibles or other type of things. So there's a lot of things that you could use in indexes that could be used. If you go short on them, even if the market goes down, you could make money. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with this concept.
Wow. As I say, it's a very large concept. So where are you at this stage? Are you beta?
Good question. So we are on mainnet with Pollen Virtual, which means everybody that wants to play goes to app.pollen.id and they can like see if they are an ugly, good, or great trader. So you can be ranked against everybody else. You can do this for almost no money. You buy a handful of pollen, you buy a little bit of AVAX, and you can start rebalancing your portfolio and see how good you are. We are in the next weeks adding leagues so that it will be possible to go, and if you're not the number one on the overall leaderboard, to specialize in the future. So that's coming soon, and shorts is also coming soon. So that's all Pollen Virtual and leagues. What we're now doing is we're raising money for our index fund token because we're setting up the automated indexes, and we have a prototype there, but that's where we're currently focusing our capital raise to accelerate that part.
I love, so it's the good, the great, and the ugly. I got that right?
Let's hope they're outstanding and better.
I'm definitely in the ugly group. Okay, that is fascinating. So if people want to find out more, Maarten, where should they go? And they can start practicing now with their little virtual pollen and get an idea if they are good, great, or ugly, which is kind of helpful.
So app.pollen.id from ID from index is where they can start practicing, and pollen.id they can get more information.
Brilliant. Well, this sounds fascinating. I look forward to hearing more about the $1 trillion marketplace in months to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.